Here's a question I want you to actually sit with for a second. Do you have trouble sleeping because you're anxious, or are you anxious because you're not sleeping? Take a moment. Which one feels true for you? Because here's the thing, most people, when they really think about it, can't actually answer that. Intrigued? Let's become more aware together. As I mentioned, most people have a hard time knowing if your anxiety is coming first or your insomnia. They know both are happening. They know the two are connected. But the order, which one started the whole mess, feels genuinely impossible to untangle. And it's not just you. This is one of the most debated questions in sleep research because it turns out the relationship between anxiety and insomnia isn't linear. It's not a straight cause and effect line. It's something more complicated. And honestly, it's something more interesting than that. And the answer to which one came first changes everything about how you approach fixing it. So that's what today's video is about. We're going to untangle this. And by the end, I think you'll have a much clearer picture of what's actually running the show in your situation. There are basically two camps that people fall into when they think about this. Camp one, my anxiety causes my insomnia. I'm a worrier by nature. My brain just won't shut off. I carry stress and it shows up at night. Fix the anxiety, fix the sleep. Camp two, my insomnia causes my anxiety. I was sleeping fine until something disrupted it. Illness, a stressful period, a new baby, whatever it is. Now I'm not sleeping. And the sleep deprivation itself is making me more anxious. Fix the sleep, fix the anxiety. Both of those camps are real, and both of those explanations are real. Both of them happen. And the frustrating truth is that for most people with chronic insomnia, both are true simultaneously, and they're feeding each other in a loop that makes it nearly impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins, which means asking which came first might actually be the wrong question. And the right question is something entirely different. But before I get into that, quick note. I put together a quiz specifically designed to help you identify which pattern is most dominant for you. Because the anxiety first path and the insomnia first path do have different entry points for treatment, even if they converge. Link is in the description. 2 to 3 minutes, genuinely useful. Go take it, then come back to this video. Let's talk about what's actually happening neurologically, because this is where it gets interesting. When you're anxious, your body runs on cortisol and adrenaline. Your sympathetic nervous system is activated. The same fight or flight system we talked about in that Racing Mind video recently. And one of the things that the system does very deliberately is suppress sleep. Because from your body's perspective, if there's a threat, you should not be unconscious. Sleep is a vulnerability. Anxiety is your brain's way of saying, not yet, stay alert. So anxiety directly impairs sleep. That part is straightforward. But here's the other direction. Sleep deprivation, even just a few nights of it, does measurable things to your brain's emotional regulation system. Specifically, it dials up the reactivity of the amygdala, which is the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats and generating fear responses. And it dials down the prefrontal cortex, which is the part that puts the brakes on those fear responses and says, okay, let's think about this rationally. So when you're sleep deprived, your threat detection system is more sensitive and your ability to regulate your emotional response to that sensitivity is weaker. You are neurologically more anxious, more reactive, more prone to catastrophizing. And what do you catastrophize about when you're sleep deprived and anxious? Well, it's sleep. whether you'll sleep tonight, what tomorrow will be like if you don't, how long this can go on, whether something is genuinely wrong with you, which generates more anxiety, which suppresses sleep further, which then in turn increases sleep deprivation, which then amplifies anxiety. So you see the loop here. This is why the chicken and egg question is so hard to answer, because once this cycle is running, it doesn't matter which came first. That loop becomes self-sustaining. It doesn't need the original cause to keep it going. Now, here's where things get more practical and more useful. Because even though the loop is bidirectional, people do tend to fall into one of three patterns. And knowing which one is yours actually does help to change the approach. Pattern 1, anxiety is primary. This is someone who has a pre-existing anxious baseline. They've always been a lighter sleeper, a worrier, someone whose brain runs hot, I guess you could say. Their insomnia is essentially anxiety that has colonized the nighttime. The arousal is coming from within, a nervous system that never fully learned to power down. For these people, the entry point is usually the anxiety itself. Nervous system regulation, reducing baseline arousal throughout the day, and cognitive work around the fear of sleep layer, and cognitive work around that fear of sleep layer specifically. Pattern 2, insomnia as primary. This is someone who slept fine for years, and then something disrupted it. A stressful event, a health issue, a life change. The insomnia started situationally, but it didn't resolve when the stressor did. Now the sleep problem itself is generating anxiety, and that anxiety is keeping the insomnia going long after the original cause is gone. For these people, the entry point is usually the conditioned patterns around sleep, stimulus control, rebuilding the association between bed and sleep, and breaking the hypervigilance that developed around bedtime. Pattern 3, the full loop. Both are present, both are feeding each other, and they've been running together long enough that they're genuinely hard to distinguish from one another. This is the most common pattern in people with chronic insomnia. The approach here is usually to work on both layers simultaneously, which sounds overwhelming, but the overlap between treating anxiety and treating insomnia is actually substantial. A lot of the same tools apply. The quiz I mentioned earlier is like an entry point to help you figure out which of these patterns is dominant for you, because the framework matters and you want to be pulling the right thread. And here's why this distinction matters practically. If you're anxiety primary and you spend all of your energy on sleep hygiene and stimulus control, using those behavioral sleep tools, you might get some improvement, but you're going to keep hitting a ceiling because the underlying nervous system activation is still there and it will keep finding its way into your nights. If you're insomnia primary and you spend all your energy on generalized anxiety treatment or management, meditation apps, journaling, therapy for anxiety, maybe it's considering, like, for example, taking chamomile or magnesium at night or something else to ratchet down your nervous system. If you're focused on that, then you also might get some improvement, but the conditioned patterns around sleep will still be running. Your brain has learned to be awake in your bed, and that learning doesn't undo itself through general stress reduction. The full loop pattern needs both. And for a lot of people, the most efficient path is CBT-I because it was specifically designed for exactly this intersection. It addresses the cognitive layer and the arousal piece at once. It doesn't ask you to pick a lane. What I cover in the Insomnia ebook is built around this framework. How to identify your pattern, what the evidence says about each entry point, and how to build an approach that's actually matched to what's driving your situation. It's in the description if you'd like to check that out. So, back to the original question. Which came first, the anxiety or the insomnia? The honest answer, for most people, it actually doesn't matter anymore. Because by the time someone is dealing with chronic sleep problems, the two are so interwoven that treating them as separate problems misses the point. The loop is the problem, and the loop has a specific anatomy: anxiety driving arousal, arousal preventing sleep, sleep deprivation amplifying anxiety, and anxiety reinforcing insomnia. And every part of that anatomy is addressable. What does matter is knowing where your version of the loop tends to run the hottest. That's your entry point. That's the thread worth pulling. If you haven't taken the mind-body pattern quiz yet, that's your next step. It'll help you figure out your patterns so you're not just throwing general sleep advice at a situation that has a specific shape. Link is below. Next time, I'm going to go into something that I genuinely love as a topic because it's so relatable and so revealing. Why you sleep perfectly fine on vacation, but terribly at home. It sounds almost funny until you realize what it actually tells you about your nervous system. That one is coming up in the next video, so make sure that you're subscribed. And as we do so, we'll all become more aware together, one step at a time.